Hey, good morning, everybody. This is First Warn Storm Team Chief Meteorologist Brad Panovich. I want to give you an update on what's going on with the severe weather threat to our west today and eventually what that could mean for the Carolinas going into tonight. First, let's look at the current situation. We've had a pretty significant tornado outbreak overnight in parts of Missouri, Arkansas, the Ohio Valley, Kentucky, and Tennessee, and this is only going to continue into the afternoon. You can see this tornado watches as well as several warnings and severe thunderstorm warnings back to the west. If we look at that STP, or that significant tornado parameter, it is weakened a little bit today, but it's still pretty strong in western Tennessee down into northern Mississippi, and it's likely we're going to see some re-intensification of this line later this afternoon. The concern is going to be tonight. When you look at the Storm Prediction Center's outlook for today, you can see there is a slight risk for all of the Carolinas, but back into western North Carolina, into a big chunk of Tennessee, you have a moderate risk for severe weather today. And when you start breaking that down by the type of outlooks that we have, we'll look at first the overall outlook, but let's look at the tornado outlook. You can see back in this red area, this is the 15% probability of seeing a tornado within 25 miles of any point on the map. This is the 10% probability. Then you get into this lighter color. This is 5%. So it's a lot less here in the Carolinas, and it's a very narrow band than it is back to the west, but it's still a little bit higher than it was yesterday. When you look at the hail threat, about 15%, and when you look at damaging winds, about a 45% chance of damaging winds in Tennessee into western North Carolina becomes 30% and about 15%. So it looks like damaging winds overall will be a much bigger threat. If we look at some of the setup for today, I showed you that STP, or significant tornado parameter. If I look at the CAPE, or the thunderstorm fuel, it's kind of very light or very small right now. I don't see a lot of CAPE developing, and that's the one thing that's kind of the big question mark in all this. When you look at the satellite image, there's a lot of clouds, and even on the radar, there's a few showers across Charlotte, north up towards Greensboro. This may help stabilize things, so we'll keep an eye on these clouds. That's why I'm not totally over the top concerned about this right now, because that amount of instability over us is really going to be lacking as the line approaches. But there's such strong wind shear in the atmosphere that it still has me a little concerned. When you look at the vorticity that's coming down out of the upper Midwest, this diving down into the Ohio Valley is really going to increase that wind shear later today and really kind of crank things up going into the evening hours in Tennessee. For us, the threat's mainly going to be overnight. So let's start looking at the future model runs here as we look at reflectivity. Let's start this afternoon. We'll go to noontime. That's what the HRW model is showing. It's showing a broken line of thunderstorms trying to redevelop as we go into the afternoon and evening hours. That tries to make a slow, steady progress towards the North Carolina mountains. A little batch goes up into parts of Virginia, but notice this line really starts to come together again later this evening, and by 7 p.m. tonight, we've got a pretty good line back to the west, which is going to move into the mountains. Now, the mountains probably have the highest risk of seeing severe storms today. They may break it up a little bit unless this stuff near the South Carolina border stays intact, which it looks like it might try to, and then move across the Charlotte area. This is at about, let's see, this is shortly after midnight, about 12 to 1 a.m. That you're looking at this starting to approach the Charlotte area, and then we go to like 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 a.m. tomorrow morning. It really weakens. So it's not a huge threat. You can see that there's still a line there, and I'm still a little worried about that little batch on the HRW model. Let's look at the NAM4, which has done pretty well recently with these kind of setups. We'll go into this afternoon and evening. This is 7 p.m. tonight. Shows the line a little bit different, a little bit more broken up, coming in a few pieces, which may actually be a good thing, because if rain gets in here first, it may break things up. Let's go into the overnight hours. This is about midnight. About 1 a.m. here, 2, 3, 4, into 5 and 6 a.m. So you can see there's not a lot of, I would say, a lot of evidence in the model data right now that there's going to be some massive outbreak of severe weather east of the mountains, but definitely worried when you see these amount of tornado warnings and the threat that's going on to the west. So I'll try to keep things up to date. I'm actually out of town this morning. I'm actually right now getting ready to do a presentation on this actual subject using social media to send severe weather alerts to people. But I will be back later tonight, and if severe weather should break out, I will be at the station overnight if things should get going. And again, that's the time frame right now. This is going to be not a daytime or even evening. This is going to be after sunset into the overnight hours. So stay tuned for possible watches. I don't foresee them coming anytime soon. It would have to be later this afternoon. And the good news is these clouds, let's look at the temperatures right now. In the 50s, we're wedged in a little bit. That's a good sign, folks. That could keep us away from this stuff as we go into the overnight hours. Hope you have a great Wednesday. I hope to see you later tonight on air. If it's only for the news, I don't want to see you for severe weather. Of course, I'll keep you up to date online on Facebook, Twitter, and at WCNC.com.